Peter Bartholow, CEO, Lab Zero Games.
So Peter, talk about your game Indivisible.
Indivisible is an action RPG that combines Metroidvania with a fast-paced combat system similar to Valkyrie Profile from the PlayStation 1. You play Ajna, a tomboy from a sort of fantasy Southeast Asian village. Her town is attacked by warlords, and she discovers she has the ability to absorb people into her mind and manifest them at will to fight alongside her. As she goes through the game, she'll get a number of weapons and abilities that allow her to traverse the environments, Metroidvania style, and as well as over 24 characters to fight alongside her.
No, I couldn't help but notice the similarities to Mega Man X in the dashing and the leaping. Was that an inspiration when you were designing the traversal?
Yeah, we have a lot of inspirations. Mega Man X is definitely one of them. Metroid, obviously. We draw from a lot of inspirations. I want to say that her jump pose is actually kind of similar to the Mega Man X jump pose in particular.
Where you have these arms out where you fall?
Yeah.
So talk about the combat in your game. You described it as fighting style, like a fighting game up there in the podium, but then when I played it, I'm like, it is like a fighting game. Wait a minute.
Yeah, so we're the studio that made Skullgirls, so combat is kind of our thing. So kind of the idea is that each character is mapped to one of the face buttons, so they're in sort of a cross formation like the face buttons on the controller. And when you tap the buttons, the character in that position will attack. And so it's kind of like your party is a single customizable fighting game character. And it's all about combos and also using their abilities as efficiently as possible.
And timing, just like in a fighting game.
Exactly.
So you guys were a Kickstarter. Can you talk about Kickstarter as a platform and why you guys were so successful on it?
So we were actually on Indiegogo. We had success with Indiegogo on Skullgirls, and the Indivisible campaign was a success in the end, but it was a much harder success. We actually had to extend it and run it for 60 days instead of 30. But we did end up raising $1.9 million by the end of that, so enough for the game and 2 stretch goals. We have a unique hybrid deal with 505 where we had to raise $1.5 million, and then they kicked in the other $2 million to fund the game. They also funded a prototype, which we actually released to drive the campaign as well, which you can still play. It's pretty old now because it came out in 2015, but it's still fairly representative of kind of what the gameplay is like.
I'm curious what your studio thought of Fig. Was that an option on the table, or did you guys just stick with what we know with Indiegogo?
We actually did talk to Fig. They were not comfortable with other corporate money touching the project. So it was, we talked to them, but basically they weren't interested because of that.
Now, did Indivisible start out as a fighting game and morph into an RPG, or was it always set out to be an RPG?
It was always meant to be an RPG. So we initially pitched it to another publisher. They had asked for a pitch that was, quote, like Child of Light. And so, we all played Child of Light and like, okay, well, what is this at its core? Well, it's a platformer combined with an RPG. So we basically, okay, well, what other games like that? Oh, Valkyrie Profile. That's like one of our favorite games. It's a platformer with a great RPG battle system. And again, like the fighting game sort of ish battle system played to our strengths. So that's what we came up with. But then from there, it was kind of like, well, we've got this, and we got seamless battles, and we can do all these other things with the technology, which kind of gradually expanded it into more of a Metroidvania than a straight-up platformer.
You guys plan on doing any PvP in the game? Because I think it would work out rather well.
At one point we did have, for like some very deep stretch goals, if we got there, we had some multiplayer ideas, but there are no multiplayer plans right now.
So when does your game come out, and what platforms will it be on?
It's coming out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and will be out in the first half of 2019.